Only our road is clear. Pskov Airborne Division destroyed February 29, 2000. Author A. Ramzan Allah says, "Among the believers are men who are indeed true to the covenant they made with Allah. Among them are those who have already fulfilled their obligations or have died, and those who are still waiting, but none of them changed their vow. We hope to find ourselves and others among those who are waiting." With Allah's permission, we will recount how we remembered the destruction of the Pskov Airborne Division on February 29, 2000. We will tell the story as 11 people who were present there. Abu Bakr from the village of Geki, the guard of Basayev Shamil from the village of Vedeno, Magomed from the city of Shali, Abdurrahman from the village of Goiti, Ahmad is from the village of Shatoy, Abdusalam is from the city of Gudermes, Islam is from the village of Senteroy, Abu Kudama is from the city of Urus Martan, Muslim is from the city of Urus Martan, Nihlo is from the city of Urus Martan, Abu Ali is from the city of Urus Martan. By the will of Allah, we will divide our story into 5 parts for better understanding. The first part is the gathering and departure. The second part is reconnaissance. The third part is the first confrontation with the Russian occupiers and the ensuing gunfight. The fourth part is the second confrontation and the beginning of the battle. The fifth part, reinforcement and victory. We will tell the first part all together. We left, abandoning our positions in the cities and villages. We planned to descend into the village of Vedeno and the knife of the yurts, and then split up into the villages to conduct guerrilla warfare. Our Jamats gathered in the village of Zoni. However, these were not all the Jamats. Some were in the village of Komsomolsk. Those who gathered were in the village of Zoni, but not all in one place. For example, some, having left their positions in the city of Grozny and traveling for 3 or 4 weeks, reached the village of Shatoy. Thus, Mujahideen were gathering from all directions. After we gathered, we aligned our ranks and moved into the mountains from the village of Uluskert. As far as we remember, it was either the 22nd or the 24th of February. After a little while, a bomb was dropped on us from an airplane, which injured several people from behind, most of whom were Dagestanis who had come to help us. Our first stop lasted 3 days. There we slaughtered our horse, which had been injured by shrapnel. Someone told Amiram to let each of them say how many people were with him, so that we would know how to divide the meat into portions, ensuring that everyone received an equal share. And after the count, as far as we remember, there were 1153 mujahideen. This number was insufficient, so we faced a choice. Either choose a small piece of meat or the soup in which that meat was cooked. It was a very cold, hungry, and difficult time. We slept in the snow, and when we woke up, we were covered in snow. Some walked barefoot in the snow because their shoes had torn. They couldn't even light a fire to warm up, and occasionally, when they did manage to start one, everyone would gather around the fire and fall asleep. There were cases when the fire burned clothing and even legs, so much so that the flesh was visible. When we lit the fire, the Russian occupiers calculated our position and bombed us. So Katab told us to stack the collected firewood in piles and let those at the back light the fires and quickly leave the area. We did just that. After a short while, the Russian occupiers unleashed all types of weapons at their disposal. What they did there was horrifying. We had such a long line that it could take a day for those coming from behind to reach those in front. Everyone was hungry, tired, and carrying weapons. We also had the wounded with us. Since the beginning of the war, there had been no rest. We either participated in battles or traveled the path. While we were walking in the mountains, even before we reached the Pskov Airborne Division, the Russian occupiers shelled us with artillery from below, and 2 of us were killed. Muslim, the brother of S. Magomed from the city of Urus Martan, and M. Shamkan is from the village of Tengichu. Also, 2 of us were wounded, and they died from those wounds. After traveling for 4 or 5 days, we stopped to spend the night. That night, Izabayev Hussein and his group moved ahead for reconnaissance. They informed us that the road was clear, and then we set out. After Hussein left, this airborne unit found itself between him and us. Thus, we proceeded, often coming under artillery fire from the Russian occupiers, what they themselves acknowledge. 1,200 shells were fired at this mountain, but in reality, there were many more. Artillery shelling by Russian occupiers. This is something they themselves acknowledge. 1,200 shells were dropped on this mountain, but in reality, there were many more. Niklo speaks. I cannot forget one image that I saw there. Our brother Povary was carrying the body of his brother on a horse. He was planning to bury him on the outskirts of the village. He died from shrapnel that hit him in the back, and he was not wearing a shirt. His back was bare. When the Russian occupiers began shelling, his horse reared in fear and fell into the ravine along with the body. But he did not leave his brother's body, even when it fell so deep, although he himself was hungry and tired. Despite his difficult condition, he went after his brother and brought his body back. 20 years have passed since then, and I still cannot forget that incident. It was a very difficult time. Hunger, cold. We would fall asleep while walking. When they took off their shoes, having frostbitten their feet, they could not put them back on because they had frozen. Many of our brothers were suffering from the cold. We were not even able to bury our deceased. Shamil's guard testifies, "I swear by Allah, the time was very difficult." We carried Shamil on a stretcher. The snow reached our knees and we were hungry and exhausted. As we were carrying the stretcher, I told the person behind me to switch with someone and help out. He would then pass the message to the person behind him, and so on, until it reached the last person, who would check if anyone was following behind. The time was so difficult for the brothers. Everyone was exhausted. After that, we found a horse and placed Shamil on it. One day, the horse got stuck in the mud and started jumping, trying to get out of there, and Shamil fell off it. I rushed to pull him out, but I couldn't do it. Then I asked for help, but no one responded. Everyone was exhausted. I asked again, raising my voice a little at them. I swear by Allah. After that, Shamil scolded me, saying, "Why are you raising your voice at them? It's better for you to leave me and go, but do not scold the brothers." He saw that everyone was exhausted. Islam recounts. I will tell the second part. I was in the guard of our president Aslan Maskadov. Reconnaissance groups were dispatched to search for routes. In order to prevent us from leaving the village of Shatoy, 70,000 Russian occupiers were deployed on the mountaintops. We, 45 Mujahideen, were searching for a way to the village of Lechenkort. Our reconnaissance group was led by Khattab and Abu Walid. We stopped to spend the night in one place, and on the second day, the 6 of us set off further. Khattab, Abu Walid, one brother from the village of Dargoy, and 3 others. After some time, they encountered the Russian occupiers, and a shootout ensued, resulting in a brother from the village of Dargoy being wounded. After that, they returned to us, and we moved back a bit to the river Vashtar, while Khattab took the wounded person from there. The next day, I left Abu Walid, but returned after some time, and told us that we needed to climb Mount Lechenkort again, where there are the dugouts that you excavated. We will try to pass through there. Agreeing, we set off on our way. As soon as we reached that mountain, I climbed up and noticed a Russian occupier. However, I was slightly doubtful. Was it really him? I called Khattab on the radio and asked, "Did you send our reconnaissance group here?" He replied that it was possible and ordered me to hurry. I said, "It's unlikely they are ours. Their faces are shaved." Then they noticed us and took their positions. Upon closer inspection, I noticed the antenna of a large radio. Then I asked Khattab, "Do we have a large radio? I see the antenna of such a radio." He replied, "No, we do not have such a radio. Wait until they get closer and shoot. They have already taken their positions and do not intend to approach us. We will do what is within our power." Then I asked those who were with me, "Can you see the Russian occupiers well?" The answer was affirmative. After that, we began to shoot at them. I told them, "Surrender to us, for neither your majority nor your comrades, whom you betray to Allah, will help you." One occupier replied to me, "It is your Allah who will not help you." As soon as he uttered these words, shells were falling close to us and to these occupiers. Then I asked him, "How do you feel about the help of our Allah?" However, there was no response. As a result, a young man from my village died, uttering the name of Allah and performing a prostration, and Abu Walid was also injured. By the will of Allah, we also killed 7 or 8 occupiers. After that, we left there, We buried the deceased by the river Vashtar. On the second day, Khattab called again on the radio and told us, "You must go back there to try to get through." Then I relayed this to the others. "We must rise and clear the road." One of them objected, "Did we not encounter the occupiers there yesterday, and return with 1 dead and the wounded Abu Wa'id?" I replied, "This is an order that we must fulfill. If we do not clear the way, we will die from hunger and cold anyway." Not everyone made it out. There were 12 of us. Halfway through, We received a call on the radio telling us to return, as we had found the way. We returned and moved together towards Shamil. And along the way, I asked a few people to climb the mountain ridge to check if anyone was there. Then Shamil from the village of Dubayurt and 4 others rose up and subsequently encountered the occupiers there, but due to the fact that our side noticed them earlier, they managed to cope. I, Abdul Kakim from the city of Urus Martan, and another brother from my village. We both ran to a hill and started shooting at them. That was the Pskov Airborne. A few of them descended, and when we started shooting, we killed several and wounded others. The remaining ones ran back to their own. They held positions on this height called 776, and there was only one way to approach them, to climb up there. Then we received a call over the radio and were ordered to retreat. We retreated. After a short time, Abudar reached the place where we had been shooting. I heard his conversation with Katab. Our people worked well. There is blood and bandages here. I even found a new assault rifle with an underbarrel grenade launcher. I'll give it to you. After we retreated and continued our way to Shamil, we came under artillery fire again. 2 were killed and 6 or 7 were wounded. Then we reached Shamil. We were constantly shelled. And Shamil was asking us, lie down behind the large trees and in the deep pits. Even if 3 people are together, they should separate, spread out throughout the forest. Indeed, they all adhered to this instruction. There were also 9 of us in one place. Shamil shouted to us, spread out. We replied to him, we have the wounded with us. We will need to carry them. One of us had a kilogram of corn flour. He was planning to feed those who were falling from hunger. We mixed it with water and ate the flour. Shamil let us listen to the conversation of the Russian occupiers. I heard with my own ears how Trochev shouted, these very same notorious thugs. There are only 300 of them. We need to destroy them in this stone bag. Use all your weapons against them, he shouted. In our village, there was a Russian guy. He was born and raised in our republic, and he knew the Chechen language very well. When we were being shelled, the horse trembled with fear. And on it was our wounded. I took the reins from that Russian and told him, go hide. It was a tough period, even for the most self-assured. The shells they dropped were breaking trees. They directed all their weapons at us. A wounded man from his horse asked me to lower him down. I replied to him, if I lower you, I won't be able to lift you back up. He was large in build and so severely injured that he could not dismount from the horse by himself. All right, hold the reins. We won't leave you here, I added. He replied, everyone has run away, leaving us alone. No one has run away. There's nowhere to run, I countered. One of our brothers with a red beard was injured. He had a fractured skull. Before he died, he opened his mouth. He could have been placed on a horse, but it was clear that he wouldn't last long. The wound was too severe. I stopped next to him, unable to pass until he passed away. After a short time, he died, slightly smiling. I swear by Allah, before his death and after, a wonderful fragrance emanated from him. Pure is Allah. Out of joy, I lingered near him for a little while longer. Also nearby lay a deceased elderly man with a white beard. They covered him with leaves and dirt to make it look like he was buried. Allah knows, I left him with a heavy heart. Once, Murad and I lay back to back. A shell fell close to us, and Murad lost his arm and was hit in the head, which caused his death. I also sustained injuries in several places. Shrapnel hit my shoulder, arm, and leg. Jalain carried me on his shoulders. I asked him to lay me down because of the severe pain. He refused. Blood was coming from my mouth. A wave struck my lungs, and I asked to be laid down again. And in the end, I said, if you don't put me down, I will shoot you. Then he put me down. After that, they tried to do something to me. A pain-relieving injection, but I did not allow it. I wished to die while uttering the name of Allah and remaining conscious. I also wanted to save this injection for the other brothers, believing that I was dying anyway, so I did not allow it to be wasted. I lay waiting for death, uttering the name of Allah, and suddenly I felt very good. I cannot express it in words, but my body felt satisfaction. Then I said, brothers, if this is death, how beautifully I am dying, how good I feel. After these words the brothers cried, and my close friend was deeply broken. I told him to stop. Someone asked me, do you have anything to bequeath? I replied that I bequeathed to raise the younger generation in the religion of Allah. And I also promised my father that I would bring a gun. If you can, take my gun to him. If not, use it in the war. After that, they cried again. I continued to lie there, awaiting death. Suddenly, a chill approached my feet. Someone said, "Sit him up." He examined my back and said, "Islam, the shard has not penetrated your back. You are not dying. Bring that injection." Then I was given an injection, which heavily clouded my mind. I don't remember this, but they said that I started saying, "Two over there, two over here, and you shoot." Unable to lift me, they dragged me, wrapping me in a blanket. I was given another injection, and after that, my memory is also hazy. After some time, when we had left there and were safe, one brother said to me, "Islam, forgive us. When they were dragging you, we were going down the slope, and unable to pull you any further, we wrapped you up like a candy and rolled you down. When we reached you, we took you and dragged you further. Forgive me for the sake of Allah for speaking too much about myself. As stories are being recorded, I have tried to share everything I remember. I am Abu Bakr. I am Muhammad. I am Ahmed. I am Abdurrahman. We will tell the third part. We were with Khattab. It was during the day, before the time of Asra. As Islam recounted, they encountered each other, a shootout ensued, and then they dispersed. Abu Bakr recounts, "The first ones to approach that landing were us, me, Abu Dar from the village of Goiti, Khattab, Han Pasha from the village of Geki, Elchi from the village of Geki, Tajik Abdus Samad, Zalmai, Ilyas from the village of Alkan Yurt, and Brahim. As we approached them, we began the battle. Abu Dar showed himself to be very courageous. Everyone demonstrated bravery, but he stood out. I remember how he shot while standing, repeating the words, La ilaha illallah. Shortly after the battle began, Khattab and I were injured by shrapnel, so we left the area. Ahmed says, Abu Bakr, there was also Galkin Alexei Viktorovich with you, who allegedly converted to Islam. We named him Abdullah. Abu Bakr says, the occupiers we initially encountered had descended from that height. They began to set up their tents, but did not have time to finish. Some were almost established, while others had not started to establish themselves. The guard of Shamil speaks. After the first confrontation, Shamil and Khattab had a bit of an argument. Khattab argued that they should bypass this landing, while Shamil insisted that they should destroy it. They are everywhere. I will testify before Allah that you did not fulfill the order of peace, said Shamil Khattab. Then Khattab agreed. Shamil lay on the stretcher, having lost a leg, while exiting the city of Grozny. Ahmed says, after the wounded Abu Bakr was taken from there, Gerat called his naib on the radio. He said to Aise from the village of Goiti, gather a few people and come to us for reinforcement. Then he began to gather a group, and I stood next to him. Before that, I had been with him in many places, in Grozny and so on. He always picked me up himself, and this is the only place he didn't take me, saying, you wait here for now, I will call you later, you will come with them, stay here. Muhammad says that he did not take me either, as I was ill and had a high fever. Ahmed says that after this, Isa, taking 10 or 15 people with him, went to reinforce Girat. After the battle began, we were continuously shelled from below. Both our fighting brothers and us, who had not yet joined, were being shelled. A lot of time passed when the shooting subsided a bit, and shots were fired occasionally. However, they did not stop shelling us. Then our wounded and fallen were taken away from there. Herat and Zalmai got close to the occupiers. Among the wounded from the mortar fire were Herat and Zalmai. 3 others also died from the artillery shelling. Abdus herself also perished there, and Isa died from machine gun fire. Magomed says, I remember well this Alexei Galkin, who supposedly converted to Islam. He was captured. Later, he converted to Islam and joined our Jamaat. He was well versed in weapons, especially in the sniper rifle. He also repaired our rifle. He participated in the battle in the city of Grozny, killing Russian occupiers. But I did not trust him, and I also heard Shamil Basayev say, you still haven't killed this man. Abu Qudama says, and I remember that Russian, I did not trust him either. Remember how Ramzan Akhmadov had a headache, and Alexei Galkin gave him a massage. After that, he felt a little better, and Ramzan asked him, where did you learn to give such a good massage? Alexei replied, we were taught everything. Magomed says that at this height he injured both his arms and both his legs. and after some time he got lost. While fleeing, he took with him the occupier we had captured, and later he was shown on the news, being called a hero. Shamil's guard says, I remember him very well. These two were from the GRU. We captured them at the beginning of the war. I kept an eye on him, and then I handed him over to Abdus. After some time I met Abdus. He asked me if I recognized this Alexei Galkin. I replied that I remembered him. Then he said that he had converted to Islam, and now he is our brother in faith. I replied, you will know in time whether he accepted Islam. I knew him well. After that, he went to the landing party with Abdus and was injured there by shrapnel. Then he approached Shamil and said to him, Shamil, I have cleansed myself of sins. Shamil looked at him with his wolf-like gaze and turned away, saying nothing. He did not trust him. They soon fled when the battle with the landing troops was underway. Ahmed says, there was a heavy artillery shelling. The ground turned black, which had been white from the snow. I don't really remember who else was wounded or killed. However, I remember the words that Isa spoke before the death of Parazzi. Brothers, do not retreat. Strive, for the gates of paradise are open. He no longer made contact. The cries of encouragement from the inspired brothers were something else. The wounded and fallen from our group were mainly hit by artillery shelling. Abdurrahman says, I remember that too. Many died and were injured from the artillery shelling. Isa was killed by a machine gun. Khattab ordered us to bring the bodies of our fallen. We went to retrieve them. There were several of us. On the way, we came across the site of the first battle. There were bags left behind by the Russian occupiers. I took a pair of shoes and a sleeping bag for myself. There were a lot of green-colored medicines there. Next, we found very grotesque bodies of the occupiers. I have never seen more grotesque corpses. There were also the bodies of several killed on our side. I swear by Allah. They lay as if their bodies had been deliberately arranged. Thus, we took the wounded and the bodies of the fallen from there. I am Abu Qudama. I am a Muslim. We will tell the fourth part. We were in the Ramzan Akhmadov Jamaat. Abu Qudama speaks. Our Amir was Ramzan Akhmadov, but he was not with us. Instead, he left Rizvan Akhmadov in his place. The Amir of our group was Abti Akhmadov, and I was his Naib, and my Naib was Muslim, who will tell the story along with me. On that day, before the time of Maghrib, Khattab approached Rizvan and said to him, gather about 10 men for reinforcement. They need help. Then Rizvan said to me, gather 10 people by their choice. I conveyed the message to Naib Musli. Rizvan asked to gather 10 people. Muslim says, I have gathered those whom I believe to be the most capable and knowledgeable in military affairs. 2 friends, M. Ahmed from Grozny, M. Omar from Grozny, Z. Magomed Said from the city of Urus Martan, L. Islam from the city of Urus Martan, M. Karlan from the city of Urus Martan. I don't remember the 6th. Abu Qudama says, V. Yunus from the city of Urus Martan asked for Allah's sake to be included, and Rizvan allowed him to go. Muslim says, there were 11 of us. 7 were mentioned, and there were 4 of us. Our Amir Rizwan, his friend Kasa from the village of Tsotsiot, Abu Qudama, and I. Abu Qudama says that when we set out, Khattab told Rizwan to stay behind, as many of our Amirs had been killed or injured. Rizwan replied, I am going. Khattab again asked him not to go, but Rizwan said that he would go anyway. Muslim said, Khattab said, by Allah and the brothers, we definitely need to occupy this hill. Rizwan asked him where they were. Khattab replied, by Allah, I don't know, look over there. We continued on, and Rizwan said to Amir of another group, select 10 people from your group. He replied, Rizwan, we are all tired. No one is able to go on. I remember it as if it happened just now. Rizwan, raising his tone slightly, said, what kind of conversation is this? Aren't we tired? Quickly select 10 men. He agreed and selected them. They were needed to guard our rear. Rizwan left them a little further away from us. On the way, we encountered brothers who were returning from there. They walked one by one, or in pairs. Some were injured, while others carried the wounded. We asked them where the battle was taking place, so that we would know where to go. From extreme fatigue, wounds, and hunger, they were unable to even respond. 1 or 2 passed by without answering us. Then Rizwan and Abu Qudama raised their voices and said, wait, answer. "Where are the Russian occupiers?" "Go there, not somewhere over there," came the reply. I'm not telling this to blame anyone. I'm just saying how it was. The brothers were not to blame. It was such a difficult time. Everyone was tired, hungry, and there were hallucinations. We also came across the bodies of 5 or 6 occupiers who were killed by Abu Dara's group and others. My brother's shoes were in poor condition, so I took one boot from a slain occupier, but I couldn't take the second one, so I left that pair of shoes. So, we reached the occupiers and started the battle. When we arrived, there was no one there. We shot upwards, while the Russian occupiers shot down at us. The Russian occupiers occupied a very convenient and good position, making it easy for them to shoot at us, since they were behind the highest point. They were shelling us from above, and we couldn't inflict any damage on them because they were behind the height. Only with a grenade could we hit them, but for that, we needed to get closer. After some time, both we and the occupiers reduced our gunfire. Suddenly, a burst of gunfire erupted from our side. Abu Qudama asked, "Who is there?" No one answered. Then Kassa stepped out from behind the tree, looking embarrassed. "It was me," he replied. He felt ashamed. "Be careful, we are right here." We told him. Abu Qudama says, "I was wounded during the shootout." At that moment, I slid down a bit. It was very cold, and we were lying in the snow. I shouted to my brothers, "Check if there is any food and bedding in the bags of the slain occupiers." They found some. We ate and lay down on the bedding. Muslim says, "I remember well during the shootout, Ahmed said, 'Rizwan, while you shoot and distract them here, can I try to sneak up on them from behind?' 'Go ahead.' Rizwan allowed him. Then Rizwan shouted after him, 'Take as many of the 10 who are guarding the rear as you need.' Ahmed approached them and said that he needed help. But only one fighter from Dagestan went with him, as everyone else was tired and exhausted. Abu Qudama says that when Ahmed left, Umar, who was with us, asked for permission to go after him, explaining that he felt uneasy with Ahmed being there. This was not the Umar that Ahmed had taken with him. He was his best friend. Thus, Umar went after Ahmed and the second Umar from Dagestan. Then Abdi sent Jafar for me, and he took me away from there. Muslim said we stayed there when they took Abu Qudama. Ahmed was very active and agile, like in the movies. Getting close to the occupiers, he killed one and took his machine gun. He was in a state of great ecstasy. After a while, he called on the radio and asked, "Can we kill any occupier that falls into our hands?" Shamil replied, "Ahmed, focus on your work. Don't get distracted." I don't remember exactly the words of Shamil, but the meaning was not to play around with them. We continued the shootout, but there was no outcome. Then, after some time, after Omar went after Ahmed, I told Rizwan, "We can't do anything from here. Maybe we should go for Ahmed's and 2 Umars." Despite being the Amir and us being younger than him, Rizwan always consulted us and considered our suggestions. He was so simple. When we reached Ahmed, there were the dead occupiers he had killed. We took food from their bags. I remember the butter we ate, plain and without anything. It was so cold on the ground that I laid on the body of a killed occupier. Thus, we shot at them, and they shot at us. We approached them slowly, taking small steps and hiding behind the trees. We finally reached them. At that moment, Rizwan thought we needed a grenade launcher operator. Calling on the radio, he requested one to be sent. Si Saifullah, from the village of Kirovo, from our Jamaat, came to us. I was in a half-lying position when he approached me. He stood by my head and said, "Get up, why are you lying down? Let's run up to them." If only you knew what cowards they are, then. Rizwan scolded him. "Where? Do you want to run? They are right under your nose, over there." Then, Si Saifullah shot at them with a grenade launcher, illuminating everything around. By this time, it had already grown dark, and when we were walking, it was just the time of Maghrib. Then he fired from the tulip launcher he had, and once more from the grenade launcher, and then he shot again from the tulip. That was how he disappeared from sight. We called out to him, but he did not respond. Also, from our Jamaat, Abdullah from the village of Kirla came to reinforce us. He was also a grenade launcher, and he died there. As far as I remember, Umar from Dagestan was injured, and then taken away. Ahmed and Umar, filled with great enthusiasm, approached the occupiers and fought while having fun. They were throwing grenades at them, and suddenly Umar was hit. He fell to the ground. Ahmed shouted to me, "Muslim, come here, Umar is injured." I ran up to them, and Ahmed and I dragged him, 2 to 3 meters, and laid him on his back. Ahmed asked me to check where he was injured, saying that he couldn't look himself. Since it was night, I could see poorly. I touched his head. It was covered in blood. He was taking his last breaths. I don't remember for sure, but I think he recited the Shahada before he died. He was killed. I took his radio. Ahmed, kneeling beside Umar, cried heavily, saying, "Umar, why did this happen to you? Everything was going so well. We were fighting so well together. They were close friends and often joked foolishly with each other. I remember how we were together." Ahmed shot at Umar's feet, and he threw a dagger over his head and hit the wall. They had sharp jokes and they were brave. Ahmed especially stood out there. Then I said, "Ahmed, if it is Allah's will, Umar will be a martyr. Let's continue our work." He replied, "In Allah and as a Muslim, I can no longer do anything. Leave me and do what you want." He remained in that state for a maximum of 10 minutes, then returned to the fray and, as before, fought very skillfully. Although Shamil Basif was not with us, he constantly kept in touch via radio, as if he were right beside us. When it dawned on him that one of us was injured, he, calling us by our names even though he was not familiar with us, asked us to take them away. And when we asked for reinforcements, Shamil said, "You need to go to them." He provided us with assistance and was aware of everything that was happening. When we called on the radio and requested to retrieve Umar's body, his brother Ali and Bacon from the city of Urus Martan went to get it. They were in our Jamaat. On the way, they were hit by shrapnel from the shelling that was being directed at us without pause. Ali was killed, and the wounded Bacon returned. Ali, who was going to retrieve his brother's body, died, so these two brothers left in a short span of time. The battle continued. Fighting against the paratroopers was not difficult, but the sound of the artillery shelling, which did not stop for a minute, was very disruptive. Huge trees were breaking and falling from this bombardment. Unable to bear the sound, I covered my ears. They were falling around us, and sometimes we heard the occupiers relaying our coordinates. 5 meters left, 10 meters right. We were nearby and hear each other. I was with Magomed Said. A grenade was thrown near us. He said to me, "Muslim, a grenade has been thrown. Hold on." The grenade exploded. I asked, "Did you get hit?" He replied, "No, how about you?" I indicated that I wasn't injured either. So, they threw a grenade 5 or 6 times, and it exploded. We were asking each other, "Did it reach you?" Ahmed, who was a bit further away from us, asked me, "Muslim, do you have a grenade left?" "One," I replied. "Throw it to me and I will throw it at the occupier who is throwing grenades," said Ahmed. I asked him, "Can you do it?" "Of course I throw in the name of Allah," he replied. Then I handed my grenade to him, and he threw it, but the grenade fell nearby. "You threw it at us," we said to him. He apologized. Then another grenade fell nearby and exploded. Magomed Said said that he was injured. I asked him if he could return on his own. He replied that he could. "Leave quickly, before you lose too much blood," I commanded him. Then he left. Then I raised myself a bit and shot at the one throwing the grenade with the underbarrel launcher, and then with the assault rifle. He didn't throw any more grenades. I filled the magazines while I had the chance. This night was very long for me. I was tired, I wanted to sleep, hoping that dawn would come soon. I was wearing a very poor quality jacket that had soaked through. I had a Casio watch with a backlight on my wrist. Often, without taking it out from under my coat, I would turn on the backlight to check the time, while waiting for dawn. The last time I looked, I remember it was 5 o'clock in the morning. Very often we offered them to surrender. While we were exchanging fire, I noticed an occupier crawling to my left. I quickly loaded the magazine and waited for him to get closer so I could shoot at him. And suddenly I fell asleep, and I woke up, from a blow to the back, as if I had been hit with a large hammer. It turned out that the occupier shot me. One bullet hit my hand and exited through my back. From the intense pain, I couldn't speak. I was repeating the Shahada. Then Ahmed, who was a little further away from me, said, "Muslim is also dead." I tried to tell him that I was alive, but I couldn't make a sound. Then the brothers killed the occupier who shot at me. An hour before the complete destruction of this landing party, one brother from our Jamaat from the city of Urus Martan picked me up. When I was being taken away, Rizvan, Kasa, Ahmed, Yunus, Islam, and Karvan were left behind. I also noticed Shamil on his stretcher, who was nearby the battlefield. I remember how my brother treated me to a swallow chocolate when I was taken away from there. After that, Ahmed said over the radio, "We are down to just 5 or 6 people. We cannot take this height." Shamil replied, "Then come down." Shamil's guard said, "I remember the words that Frizvan spoke when everyone's spirits were low, and it was decided to bypass the landing. He said, speaking over the radio, 'Brothers, for the sake of Allah, let's try one more time, even if we all perish.'" Many mujahideen were inspired by these words. Abu Ali says, "I will tell the 5th part. I was already with Ahmad of Ramzan, but he was not with us. He was replaced by Ahmad of Rizvan. He commanded me to stay, gave me some things, and left, as Abu Qudam and Muslim said, taking 10 men with him for reinforcements. Abu Qudamu and Muslim were taken from there, as they were injured. This was before dawn. I heard the sounds of gunfire and the radio. Rizvan called Shamil Basayev on the radio and said, 'Several people among those who were with me are dead and wounded. I need reinforcements.' Shamil replied over the radio, instructing those who could to go help Sharif. This conversation was overheard by Akhmadov Apti, who said, 'I am coming to you.' Rizvan replies, 'You wait.' Shamil tells them, 'Let whoever can go to Sharif.' Apti replied, 'Sharif, I am coming.' Rizvan says, 'You wait.' Shamil tells him, 'If you do not allow me to come to you with Siddiq, I have no one else to send to you.' Then Apti said, 'Sharif, I am coming.' Rizvan replied, 'Then come.' Abu Ali says that not everyone had radios, and probably many of them had dead batteries. We were constantly bombed. Everyone was tired, hungry, and exhausted. It was impossible for everyone to hear Rizvan. Islam says, 'Abu Ali, I remembered when you told the story. I also heard that conversation between Rizvan, Apti, and Shamil. Indeed, Abu Ali, it was a difficult time. The snow was knee-deep, it was cold, there was hunger, weapons, injured people that needed to be carried, and the incessant bombing. The brothers could not be found. Some had fallen asleep in the snow and could not wake up, and their minds were not functioning. Some have not slept under a roof for 2 weeks, and it could be a day or even more, since some have had nothing in their stomachs except snow. Allah is a witness." Abu Ali says, Apta said that those who wished to follow him should do so. There were a maximum of 15 people with him. I do not remember all the names. Idris, the brother of the fallen grenade launcher, M. Saifullah. Oleg, in parentheses Abdurrahman, is from Ukraine. Abdul Hadi is from the village of Tsotsyurt. Yamukadi is from the city of Urus Martan. Ukata is from the city of Urus Martan. Isa is the nephew of Akamadov, Rezvan, and Apte. That's all I remember. Amdus Salam says, "We were in the Jamaat of Abdurrahman. From our Jamaat, Abu Bakr from the city of Gudermes was killed there." Katab also spoke of him, saying that a strong aroma of miska emanated from him, and every passerby could feel it. Khalid, the emir of the Achkoy Martin Jamaat, despite having a wounded arm and being unable to hold a weapon, went to the occupier along with Apte and was killed. Ali from his group was also killed. Abu Ali says that Apte, along with his group, went to reinforce Rizvan, and the battle began again. Islam recounts, "I heard Rizvan say to Shamel over the radio, 'There are only a few of these pigs left.' The guard of Shamel says, 'I remember how Rizvan spoke over the radio. Brothers, another one of our brothers has fallen.' He was not talking about his brother Apte, but about his friend Kas from the village of Tsotsyurt, who was like a brother to him." Abu Ali speaks. After that, Rizvan called Shamil on the radio. "It's falling, Sharif." Shamil replied, "I am listening to you, Sharif. The hill is ours, the road is clear," he said. Then I quickly approached Rizvan. He was very saddened, as his friend Kasa and brother Apte had died. Abu Qudama says, "When I climbed to this height, I saw Rizvan sitting next to his brother Apte. I loved Apte very much and knew him long before the war began. He was also my Amir. Seeing that he was dead, I cried. Then tears flowed from the eyes of Rizvan, who was sitting hunched over. After that, Yunus, standing nearby, also began to cry." Nilu speaks. "And when I got up, I saw 2 piles of the bodies of the killed occupiers. Some were lying scattered. Almost all of them had their heads smashed in, and their bodies were very badly bruised." Abu Ali says, "We searched for the bodies of our fallen and found all except the grenade launcher Saifullah. After that, we began to collect trophies. Someone took a tulip, moving the bodies of the occupiers, and said, I found a tulip. Having remembered, we checked, and Isa, Rezvan's nephew, recognized him. This little tulip belonged to his uncle Abdurrahman Akhmadov, in parentheses Kuto, and it was with the grenade launcher Saifullah, whom we could not find. Then we sifted through the bodies of the occupiers, and found Saifullah in the trench among the dead occupiers. While shooting, he approached them and died, falling into the echo pit, Idris cried, standing over the body of his brother Saifullah. He himself was also wounded in the arm. Rizvan asked him, "Was Saifullah older than you?" "Yes," he replied. "Then you can cry. My brother was younger than me," Rizvan told him. Isa said, "Today my heart is filled with these Russians." Muslim said, "Isa, Abte's nephew, gave me the jacket that Abte was wearing when he died. It had his blood on it." Abu Ali says, "We were commanded to collect the trophies, but no one was able to carry them. Shamil was told that the brothers would not be able to carry this weapon, so let whoever wants to take it," he replied. Even before he said that, I took 2 rifles with folding stocks for myself. After a while, someone from those who were dragging the wounded Shamil Basayev said to me, "I have a rifle with a wooden stock. Could you exchange it for a rifle with a folding stock? As an example?" "If you want, take both," I replied to him, and I handed over the rifles. After that, we somehow buried our fallen comrade and left. Islam says, when we were leaving there, having destroyed the landing party, Shamil called on the radio and said, "They say the occupiers have come for the bodies of the destroyed landing party. They may follow our tracks and encounter those who are behind, who are able to wait while staying slightly behind our group." No one answered. Again, Rezvan made contact and said that they would stay. Shamil asked, "Do you still have strength left?" Rezvan replied, "The strength that remains with the others is also with us." Shamil said to them, "May Allah be pleased with you. It feels as if I can still hear Rezvan's voice," Abu Ali says. After we descended into the villages, I spent almost a year with the brothers who destroyed the landing party and reclaimed that height. I was with Rezvan, Yunus, Isa, and Abdurrahman. When I asked them to tell me what happened there, they told me, after Abte brought reinforcements, the battle entered an active phase again. Since they were close, neither the RPG-18 Muka nor the underbarrel grenade launcher worked. After some time had passed since they entered the battle, Abte stood up straight and shouted at the occupiers, "Surrender to us, prisoner!" And at that moment they shot him, hitting him in the chest and cheek. He fell face down and died. At the same time, Idris was injured, and Rezvan was examining him, as it was difficult to see in the dark. Idris told him that he was not seriously injured. At that moment, Rezvan learned that Abte had been killed. He threw down his automatic rifle, took the machine gun from Idris, shouting Allahu Akbar, and ran towards the occupiers. Behind him ran Yunus, Isa, and the Ukrainian Oleg Abdurrahman. When Rezvan was firing at those in the trenches, the machine gun ran out of ammunition, and he returned for his automatic rifle. But Yunus, Isa, and Abdurrahman did not notice this. They ascended to that height, while Yunus fired at the occupiers, and he was shot at in bursts, causing his pouches and gear to tear. And he, spinning, fell to the ground, but was not injured by the will of Allah. Isa thought that Yunus was dead, but when he and Abdurrahman, the Ukrainian Oleg, were shooting at the occupiers, he got up and joined them. Looking around for Rezvan, Isa walked back a few meters when he did not see him, thinking that he had perished. Then he saw Rezvan coming with his automatic rifle. When he and a few other brothers approached, jumping into the trenches, they finished off the remaining occupiers there and took that height by the will of Allah. The reason for this was Rezvan, who ran up to the occupiers. The battle began at Maghrib and continued until dawn, so I was told. A total of 28 people died there, but only a few of them were killed in the shootout with the landing party. Having destroyed this Pskov landing force by the will of Allah, we traveled for several more days through the mountains, then descended into the villages and began guerrilla warfare. After everything was over, Rezvan said, "The best night is the one spent on the bodies of the Russian occupiers." This was the hardest time in our lives.